Hello. Today we're going to create the notification center in our iOS 8 lock screen recreation in Pixate. It's just contains a slidable panel, slide down from the top, two views with a header, today view, a notification view, and it's closable. It's going to be relatively easy to make. So the first thing I'm going to do is add in our shell container to the notification view. This is going to be larger than the screen because we want to have something that we can drag on and hold all of everything that's inside of it. So we're going to actually make this 320 pixels wide and 667 pixels high. And we're going to place this way up top at negative 641. Go ahead and make this transparent. So now you'll see we're going to have room to contain everything, and then down here is what we're going to be able to grab onto so that we can drag this down. We'll rename this to notification center container. We're going to drag interaction to this, say vertical, and we're going to set its max position to 0. So now we're going to have this container that'll be draggable. We can't see it because there's nothing inside of it yet, but it's draggable. So now let's place our assets in here. Go into our assets folder. Bring this up, and we can start placing some of our stuff. First, we're going to place our footer. So notification center footer. Let's set this here. We're going to reposition this in a minute because we want it to sit 640 pixels down, but we'll come right back to that in a second. We'll place this lock screen status bar white 2, which will be placed on top, and then both of our headers, so the notifications header and the today view header. We'll pull these inside of our container. And reset this hierarchy here. So we want our status bar to be at 0, 0 within this container. And then our headers will go right beneath it. We're going to place this footer within here at 538. And now we can place in our actual panels. The first way what we're going to do is create a clipping mask. They're going to be scrollable. So we'll place this inside. We'll place it right below these headers. Place it in here. We're going to make this 474 pixels. This is going to be the scrollable view. And we'll rename this notification center clipping mask. And we'll make it transparent. Then we can place our panels in here. So we'll have the today view panel. It's going to go right down here. And our notifications panel. We'll place these inside of our container. We're actually going to place these inside the clipping mask. And then our today panel is going to go right here as well. Sorry. Right here, right at the top. We'll reposition our headers. Forgot that they have a top on them. So there we go. Now everything is perfectly in spot. It's sitting directly on top. You can see this panel, the bottom of this panel is sitting right on top of our screen here. So if we pull it, it'll show up just like this. Now we don't have any constraints set on this, minus the fact that we can't pull it down past 0, but this is exactly how we want this to be. So we'll come in here, reposition our footer since that's off. Set this right here. And we have our basic building blocks for this. So our footer's right down here. It stops right there. So one final thing that we're going to place in is our swipe bar icons, which are actually going to double as buttons. So if we come in here, we have notification swipe bars. We have the straight swipe bar and an arrow swipe bar. Those sit directly on top of the footer. So we're going to place them in there and position them. We'll position them inside of the container. We'll just place these, we can place them on top. We want them to be above the footer, so we'll just set them right here. And we want to make them placed in the center of this. So the straight swipe bar is going to be placed at 143 and 550. And then the arrow is going to be placed at 145 and 550. It's slightly thinner than the straight one, so it goes in just a little bit further. That's why it's not both 143. We're going to make both of these start out at 0 opacity because we're going to make them fade in on their animations. We're going to make these actually fade in and out almost based off of each other. So you're not going to see the arrow with the straight bar, and you're not going to see the straight bar when we have the arrow one. The easiest way we're going to do this is just start them both off at 0, and they'll fade in when we start to drag this panel down. So we'll click on our actions. We're going to add a fade animation to this straight swipe bar. We'll call this fade in on drag. And it's going to be based off of notification center containers drag position with duration to final value. We're going to use a 0.25 second animation duration for these. And we're also going to add in a condition. So it's not going to fade in just because, we don't want it to fade just because we're dragging. We only want it to fade in after we're at a certain point. So we're going to come in here, we're going to add this condition, notification center container, bottom position is greater than 36 pixels. Then it's going to fade into 100. So now when we drag, this fades in. We pull past it, it'll fade back out. Since this is going to release based off of, we're going to drag it and release it, we're also going to tell it to fade out on release. That way we make room for the swipe bar arrow to fade in. So add another fade animation. Call this fade out on release. Based off notification center containers, drag release. Go down to 0%, and using our same animation, 0.25 second duration. So if we drag it, it's there, and if we let go, it's gone. If we continue to drag, it'll show up. So for the swipe bar arrow, we're actually going to turn this into a button to make our container move back up. So first we'll just add a tap animation, and now we're also going to make it fade in and out based off of the drag position or the drag interaction for this panel. We're going to do 3 animations, 3 fade animations. Bring this first one in. We'll rename this to fade in on drag release. So while this straight one fades out, this one's going to fade in. Do it on notification center containers drag release with duration of final value, fade up to 100%, stay linear, and we're going to use our same animation, 0.25 seconds. We'll add another one. We'll call this fade out on tap. It's going to be based off of its own tap. So the swipe bar arrow's tap. Make it fade to 0. Use our same animation duration. And we'll do one more to make sure that it doesn't fade, that it stays hidden while we're dragging. Call this fade out on drag. And this will also be based off the notification centers, containers, drag start. With duration of final value, we'll go to 0%, 0.25 second duration. So now if we pull this down, we have our straight bar. If we let go, this arrow fades in and out. So it'll fade out if we start to drag and fade in. This swipe bar doesn't seem to be properly centered, or one of these is not centered, so let's go in. There we go. So go back and move swipe bar arrow's position to 140 pixels in, 550 pixels down. And that matches. Okay. So now we want to go back to our shell container and make this animate with the drag. So we're able to drag it freely, but we want it to bounce down when we let go. So we'll come in here, we'll go back to the container. We're going to add another move animation to it. We'll call this move down on drag. And this will be based off of its own drag position or drag release, so that we're still able to drag it freely, but when we let go of it, it's going to bounce down. And we'll tell it to move its top, just to be easy, down to 0. And we're going to use a spring animation on this. We're going to set the friction to 40 and the tension to 400. So now if we can drop this freely and let go, then it'll bounce down. Now we need to make it so that we can close this. So we're going to add another move animation. Call this move up on tap. It's going to be based off of our swipe arrow tap. And we'll move this back to its position at -641. We'll leave this linear, but we'll slow this down a little bit so we're at 0.3 seconds. So now if we drag this, it'll go down. If we tap it, it'll go back up. Now you'll see that we still have this, kind of this tail end of this panel here. We don't want to see this. So we're going to go back to our clipping mask. We forgot to do this earlier. Just go over here where it says clippings. Let's change this to bounds. This will refresh. And now what's inside of it won't show through. So now it looks like we just have this panel in here. You can see that our clipping mask is actually slightly off. So we'll readjust this. Just going to pull these out because I can't edit this with the layers inside of it. There, bring this right to the bottom of the header. Pull these back in. Set to bounds. So now that our clipping mask is working, we don't see anything underneath this panel, and we have our animations working just fine. We're going to go and make the today view and the notifications view be able to cycle through. What we're going to do, it's going to be fairly simple. We're just going to make it so that when you tap on one of these layers, either the header or the panel itself, the other header below it is going to show up, and the panel below it will show up. So the way we have these set up is we have this notification panel below the Today view. So we just make that hide, it'll show through. So what we're going to do is add tap interactions to all 4 of these panels, because we're going to be able to tap on all 4 of them and something's going to happen. So on the panels, both the panels and the headers, add one to the Today header, in the notifications header. Let's reposition this. And we're going to add fade animations to them. So we'll start with the panels. Just add a fade animation to the Today panel. We'll call this fade out on tap. It's going to be based off of its own tap. So if we tap Today's panel, we'll make this fade to 0. And we'll make it happen instantly. We'll add one more so that we can get back to it. Let's fade in on notification tap. And this will be based off of the notification panels tab. And we'll make it fade back to 100. Instant duration. And so now if we bring this down, if we tap on it, it disappears. If we tap on the notification center, it hides. You can see now that this notification center panel is down just a little bit. Let's go back and reposition this. There we go. Well, it's fading perfectly. We're going to do the same thing for the header. You see the headers aren't changing. So we'll come up here to Today's header, since that's the one that's on top, and do the same thing we did with this panel. So we'll call this fade out on tap. It's going to be based off of its own tap. Today header, tap. Make it fade to 0 instantaneously. And we'll add another one so that we can get back to it. Fade in on header tap. This is going to be based off of the notifications header tap, since that's the one that's going to be visible. And we're going to make it fade up to 100% instantly. So since the panel is working, there's one more thing we need to do. We need to make this Today view scrollable. We can't actually add just a scroll animation in. It won't work because of the way that we have these nested groups. So we're going to add a drag interaction to it, and we're going to add constraints. So we'll set this to vertical, and we'll add the minimum, make the minimum position -130. I already have these measured out. And the maximum position -64. We're going to allow for a little bit of springiness. It's not going to be perfect like the scroll is, but it will do. And so now if we look at this, we can pull this, and it'll bounce back and drag back to our position. So now everything's working just properly, and we can make this move. So that's it for creating the notification center. We've got everything working the way we want it to. Tap anywhere on the screen and make them cycle through. And we've got this cool animation with the swipe bar that'll fade based off of drag and release. We're going to use similar tactics to recreate the control center in the final tutorial. To make the swipe bars animate, we're going to make some working sliders, and we're actually going to create a pseudo background dimmer, backlight controller from within the panel. So look for that, and thanks for watching.